we got this badge. I took a journalist down the Birdsville track many years ago, and when I got back, unbeknowingly to me, he struck this badge, and we managed to get that. A couple of years before, I went out to Alice Springs in company with another 7 vintage cars, and they all had major problems and troubles, and some went on the train and when we were out there, they decided that because we'd come 3,500 kilometres and braved all the dirt road, that they struck this badge up, and they called it the Overlander badge, and that particular badge is still going today, and this one's number 1.
Ooh. Tell me, what was this one about, Phil?
7 vintage cars, including the Plymouth, went out to Alice Springs in 1975. The roads mostly then were all dirt, very hard going for a lot of cars, and they all broke down in some form or other. And we managed to get out there and back home under our own steam. Egg, you want to start again? This particular badge, called the Overlander, was struck specially for a group of vintage cars that went out to Alice Springs in 1975. And it was quite unusual for anyone from the eastern seaboard to get to the heart of Australia. And we did that without, got there and back under our own steam, and that is actually another story in itself, the steam part, because at Ayers Rock I did my radiator in, and after that I had to keep throwing egg and sand and dirt and grit and anything in to stop it. And so we start to come home from Alice Springs, and it's just on 2,000 kilometres, and we're actually Ayers Rock we're at, and so we got to a little place called Lee Creek one night, and I remembered that I'd seen bran used in boiler tubes in a power station. So I hunted round the next morning and got some bran, and it was marvellous. We could do about 20 or 30 mile without filling the radiator up, which was terrific. But by the time I got near Sydney, the radiator was blocked up with bran, so I had to pull it off and clean it and put it back on again and start all over again.
Yeah. So the Overlander was your first one.
Yeah.
And what about this one here?
I took a journalist down the Birdsville track in 1977, and the idea was they got a new Valiant, which is a Chrysler product, and this, and they had a comparison between the two cars. And we took 2 vehicles, and we had a job to get down the Birdsville track. It was flooded at the time and closed to traffic, but we managed to get through. And when we got back, unbeknownst to me, he got this badge struck for us, and we're still friends today.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Would you like to have a look at the mill?
I would.
Yeah,
Give me
all
a
right.
tour of the mill.
Yeah. This is the old mill. It's not the timber yard in Mullumbimby. This is the old mill.
Is this a real mill?
Yeah. This is a 4-cylinder side valve motor that was common in its day, and very reliable motor, and there's not a lot of maintenance got to be done to it. It's very, very good. And of course it's got a few modern accessories on it. I put a downdraft carburettor on it instead of an updraft. Right. And I've got an alternator on it because some days we've done up to 1,300 kilometres in a day. And that's big mileage in any way.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And in 1999 we happened to have a challenge between a Tiger Moth aeroplane and ourselves racing around Australia, and we actually beat the plane and the motorbike in this old heap of garbage. So
fantastic. Yeah.
That's probably been one of our greatest triumphs as far as mileage and that's concerned. But it's a very simple motor. It's thermosiphon, there's no water pump in it, and it's just a big hose and a big radiator. And apart from that time when I did the radiator at Ayers Rock, the rough roads actually ruined the radiator. I've had no troubles with it since, cooling. Well, in 1999 we happened to race an aeroplane and a motorbike to every capital city on the mainland, and we actually did 14,000 kilometres in 19 and a half days. And those red dots are the capital cities. And we even included Canberra as a capital city.
Well, that was good of you.
Oh, it was, yeah. Very condescending.
So how did the name come about, Rattling Salvation?
Well, I always reckon that if it ain't rattling, it ain't going. So, and RS was a word that was used derogatory a few years ago for other things, and I thought, oh well, I'll put that on, and people can choose between the two. But I put Rattling Salvation on just to make sure that they got the right version.
Fantastic. So I think there's an interesting story about how you got this car. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I'd like to hear that one.
Years ago I was a fairly big car carrier in Sydney, and my wife had gone away with the children on holidays to the in-laws' place at Lithgow. And when she came back she said, I found you an old Plymouth motor car up in Lithgow. And I said, oh yeah. She said her dad used to drive it for the owner, who was not a very good driver, when it was new, and the man still had it, and it was on blocks in a shed. And so I went up to Lithgow with one of our car carriers and brought it back. And strange as it may seem, but my wife was carried to, her mother was carried to hospital pregnant with my wife.
In this one?
In this car, yeah. So it's got a, it's got a bit of, although it didn't belong to the family, it belonged to a close friend of the family. Oh. And I bought it off the original owner.
So it was meant to come to you?
Oh, I don't know. Who know? You don't know these things, do you?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that this wasn't your first adventure with a car. I think you've had other adventures too. Can you tell me about any of them?
Oh, I've had a lot, but I was invited through Peter Davis, a chap that I took down the Birdsville track years ago, to participate in the first Variety Club Bash in Australia. It was run by a mad Australian called Dick Smith, who most people know. And so we all left Sydney with a lot of hoo-ha, and we had, there were 4 cars in our team, 2 Volkswagens, a Land Rover and the Plymouth. And what happened, each day they'd get into a control point, but we had 2 Volkswagens, and one would leave early in the morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and head for the evening's destination and be there long before any others. The second one would go through the starting point twice with different numbers on it.
Ah.
So, I mean, and there were prizes for cheating.
Oh, were they? Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. And of course, on that particular run we had John Singleton, who was an Australian millionaire, and he, his car rolled going north when the sun was setting in the west because the sun was in his eyes. And
that's his excuse anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's sticking to it.
Yeah.
And we, although ours was probably the slowest car of the field, every night we'd be in probably before more than half the field because our reliability, it was just a thing, and they'd be broken down on the side of the road. And Volkswagen got a VW and completely restored it, and they put a rally trial driver in, a bloke called Barry Ferguson, with the hope of winning this rally. And anyhow, Barry broke down a few times, and I've known him because he's got a few vintage cars too. So every time I passed him broken down on the side of the road, I yell out, "Get up, Plymouth, Barry!" and of course, you know. Yeah. But when we got to up almost to the final stop, which was Burketown, at the bottom of the Gulf of Carpentaria, the idea was you couldn't drive into town, you had to swim over a croc-infested river. This was part of the deal. And then you pick up your car on the other side, you know, and then you've got a passport into Burketown.
Sounds like suicide mission to me.
Yeah, and of course some people rigged a flying fox and went over upside down and backwards, and our team had actually gone into Burketown and changed the name to Weldon Town. He was our sponsor. So, and this Kevin Weldon bet Dick Smith that he wouldn't get to Burketown because Burketown had disappeared. They pulled all the signs down and everything.
Change the name, yeah.
They changed the name.
God.
Yeah, so there was a lot of skullduggery went on. But when the final thing, when it all amounted to, we raised $240,000 for the Variety Club of Australia, which is a children's charity. And that was the first big event that they had. Today, they've probably got about 4 events like that running throughout Australia during the winter months and probably raised $6 or $7 million, you know, so, you know. Yeah.
So you were the precursor for the...
Yeah. We were the first lot to try that. But since then I've been on Endeavour Foundation runs, which is in New South Wales, used to be called the Spastic Centre, and then Kidney Foundation runs. For the Royal Flying Doctor I've raised money for, as well as the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which was the 1999 round Australia. Go to sleep.
So do you actually use this car on a regular basis?
Oh, I try to. I've got a tow bar on the back and I pull a trailer with it, and over the years I've done some awful things with it as far as loads and that. Little tractors and just about everything, you know. And I carry timber on the side of it, and I can show you some photos to verify what we do with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, can you start it up today?
Oh, I can try.
Okay.
What's your crank handle? Are you left or right-handed for the crank handle? Oh,
Right.
Oh, bad luck. You've got to be left-handed to start it.
Okay. So
But we'll try.
So Phil, what's the startup process here?
Well, you put it in neutral, and you turn the key on,
Right.
and you...
So that was a little bit of choke.
Just a little bit of choke, because it's a bit cold at the moment.
And
I'm waiting for the oil pressure to pick up. Yeah, the oil pressure is just picking up now. All systems go. Chocks away,
yes.
flaps up.
So you must be a mechanic if you've got a car like this.
Well, with a vintage car, you've got to be prepared to get under the bonnet. You know, there's always some little thing that'll want doing. This car really is, I'd say, pretty foolproof. It'd actually outlast most of the modern cars, and I find that this is cheaper to run than the Subaru that's parked behind me. This is our first attempt at floating the car. They're inflatable wool bags blown up off the exhaust pipe, and they're the actual tubes that go in with a one-way valve. And there was 6 bull bags there to hold us up out of the water, and on the back on a transom we had an outboard motor as well. That was in 1987. So
did that inspire you to the next?
Yeah, oh yes, I always had it in my mind to have another go. Yeah. Why
On
not?
the water? On the water, yeah.
On the water, yeah.
So you were determined to do another water trip.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And what happened during the bicentennial year in 1988, the whole of the focus was on tall ships coming into Sydney Harbour, and they'd forgotten about all the inland. And years ago, the Darling and the Murray and all their tributaries used to be the lifeblood of the inland of Australia. And I wanted to resurrect it and do something for the inland of Australia. So this is the reason we stuck it out. We've got the Boxing Kangaroo flag there. They're all houseboats parked on the bank. And
Along the Murray?
Along the Murray. And we had a ball. That was probably a great trip it was, because wherever we pulled up of the night, we just threw our swags on the side of the bank and no one said move. If we're in Byron Shire, they'd said, oh, you can't do that. But no, it was great. We got a terrific amount of hospitality shown to us. We were invited in for meals, showers and that on the way down.
Fantastic.
That's pack nights for the award. You know, this is the Echo.
Mm-hmm.
That's the year I got the Eccentricity Award. That was in '88 too.
And
That's,
well deserved.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah.
So like you said, anybody can go on roads with a car, but weren't you ever afraid that your vehicle would end up in the drink?
Well, I always looked at it this way. Whatever you do, if you put the hard yards in and you do everything as good as you can and you take as many risks out of anything you do as possible, you're going to succeed. If you go in haphazard and half-cocked, you won't succeed. No. But if you put everything in right, and even on our trip around Australia, you know, I reckoned I did everything as good as I could for that trip. I went to a gym 3 months before I left, just to make sure that I was physically fit, because I was by far the oldest person. I was 20 years elder than most people on the trip.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so you got fit, and you got put everything in place to do the water trip on the river. What else came out of that trip on the water besides highlighting inland Australia?
Well, I mean, we managed to get on the Brisbane River and raise money for the Endeavour Foundation. With that, we went down to Coffs Harbour and we were down there and raised money for the Lions and Rotary. So there was an off-spin, you know, for others as well, you know.
Sure. Yep.
That is a photo of the Plymouth going down the Darling.
Yeah.
And that's the Sunraysia Daily in Mildura. That's the front page. That's the second page that we got also. And look here, Queen commends youth. Look, I got all that, and the Queen is secondary. And I thought, isn't that nice? I'm above royalty.
This goddess got first go on the front page. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the front page, and that was the next page. See, that's page 1 and that's page 2.
Right.
And there's the Queen down there.
Terrific.
Yeah.
It's a good one too here.
I made a set of rail wheels for it, and I decided that we'd go down to Byron Bay on just the back of the town, and just see if everything fitted according to Hoyle. So we put the wheels on, and blow me dead, we're only there about 2 minutes, and then there's Darcy McFadden, a photographer for the Northern Star, is up on the fence taking photos.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So something I try to keep low key was, you know, hit the front page of the
splashed all over the district.
Yeah, and really I wanted kept very quiet.
Must have been a kick-ass long way.
It's a bit Spartan.
Yeah, it must have been a long way.
So, Jan, are you volunteering for the next trip, the co-driver to Alice Springs?
No, I think I'd rather really go on the rail trip or the Sydney trip.
I think I'll watch it on television.
Okay.
Bye.
Phil, what ever gave you the idea to take the car on other surfaces besides, you know, dirt and bitumen?
Oh, I think probably one person said to me at one time that he reckons I was born a century too late. And I just think that today most people just tend to do things stereotype, and there's really no need for it. There's a lot of adventure still to be got, and good fun, good clean fun. You're not hurting anyone, and you can enjoy yourself at the same time. And the particular trip on the railway line up at Tenterfield was really magnificent. We're on a line that hadn't been used for 4 years, and because it hadn't been used for 4 years, the kangaroos, the young kangaroos and that, and the joeys, had never seen a vehicle on the line, and there was pandemonium broke loose amongst the hoppers, and We struck some mountain goats up there, and very interesting. And I even received a letter from a lady in Sydney, I've still got the letter, saying that when I did the trips commercially, she'd love to go with me. And I've never, ever been short of anyone to go on any of these expeditions. There's always someone will come along.
So what was your inspiration for the rail trip?
Oh, it was just, I looked at the map of New South Wales, and at the time there was about 600 odd kilometres of disused railway line that wasn't being used, was out of service, and I thought, what a great way to, I can go out there on rubber wheels, change to steel wheels, go along the line, change back to rubber again, so I've got the best of both worlds. And a great place to camp alongside the railway line. There's nothing else there, and you're away from everyone. Beautiful.
And when you were thinking about that railway trip, back in those days, did you have to have permission from rail authority or shire councils or?
Well, the railway was controlled by in those days, the State Rail Authority, SRA, and they, I tried to get permission from them. I knew a bloke that was on the 3801, which is the steam train committee, and I couldn't get any permission off them, so I thought, I'm going to be an old bloke by the time I do get permission, and it doesn't look like I will, so I just went ahead and did it without their permission.
Any repercussions?
Oh yes. They rang me up after. No one had known about it, but it went on the 7:30 report and spread all over Australia. And of course, then we.
Cat was out of the bag.
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, I got a ring from the chap in charge of the Northern Line from Newcastle, saying that if I ever did it again, that'd be it. So I took heed to his warning, and I've kept up with the promise and haven't been on the railway line since.
Good boy.
Have you still got the wheels, Phil?
Yeah, I still got the rail wheels. On my word, I couldn't get rid of those. They're part of the car. Yeah. And before I put the cleats on to hold it on the track, I had a 6-inch wide, very flat surface, and I drove around here one Sunday at about 40, 50 kilometres an hour, and it just sounded like a mob of steamrollers running up and down the road.
Brought Brunswick heads to life, did it?
Yeah, that's right, on a Sunday afternoon, yeah.
And how about the ABC? How did they get involved with the whole rail thing?
They found out that I'd been on the railway line previous at Tenterfield, and I'd kept that one very quiet. The local cockies came with me, and things were very quiet, but somehow they found out and they rang up, and a chap called Ben Cheshire said, can we come up and do get on the railway line? I said, oh yeah, no problem. So we started with that. But the good thing about it, I've got a trailer with rail wheels made for it as well. So when we were doing rail trips, we took all the rubber tyres off and put them in the back of the trailer. And I think at one time we had 14 people on board doing a trip on the rail, and it's just magic, because if you go to back, you just put the car in reverse and you don't have to worry with the steering wheel, and you go forward, you don't have to worry, there's no driving to do. Oh, it's magic, you can really relax.
So what was the best part of that trip for you?
Just seeing the lot of wild animals and that hadn't seen human beings for a long, long while, and the camaraderie you get with people like that, you all get round and you've sort of got a common cause, and it's great.
So where did the ABC crew ride? In the trailer?
No, they rode everywhere, on the side, leaning over the mudguard, and the reporter sort of sat in the front seat with me. We had the hood off at the time, so it was actually a tourer, with the hood down. And there was plenty of room for everyone, and we also had a reporter from the Tenterfield Star as well.
Fantastic.
And an 87-year-old local cocky, and about a 8-month-old baby.
Oh, baby as well.
Yeah.
Baby on board.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. In 2000, you did a trip to Alice. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I went out solo, just the Plymouth and myself, and I was supposed to meet some blokes out near Wanaring, which is on the New South Wales side of the South Australian border. And when I met them there, I camped with them that night, and they said, because you're slower, you get up at about 5 in the morning and you take off, and we'll catch you during the day. So I did that, and I never saw them at Alice Springs. I beat them in by 12 hours into Alice. So that was all right, but I went over there for as a Hall of Fame for transport, road trains and the likes, and I had a real good weekend there. But on the way back I came across a very lonely road, and I had 3 heart attacks on the road, and I was pretty crook, and I got into a little place called Boulia, which is over in Queensland, and I was riding in pain, and a couple of my mates that had come along after took me up to the local hospital, and within an hour I was in a Royal Flying Doctor plane going to Mount Isa Hospital, where I spent 10 days in intensive care. So, and then my wife came up and we flew back to Brisbane, and when I got to Brisbane I rang up the NRMA, who I'm a member of, and I said, what can you do for me? I said, I've got a car out at Boulia that I had to leave there, you know, and I've had a heart attack. And they said, well, we can retrieve the car for you, or we can give you a limousine from Brisbane down to your home in Brunswick Head. So I opted for the limousine because the car has never been anywhere that it hasn't got back under its own steam, and I didn't want to break its record.
Fantastic.
So this might be a bit of inspiration for people that are, you know, that have some sort of an ailment, to go ahead and still go forward and not look inward and go backward. Yeah.
Good lesson learned.
Yeah.
Yes, right. How'd the Blast from the Past race materialise?
Well, it started a couple of years before. There was a chap called Roy Raymond, went round Australia in a little Taylor Cub, raising money for the Westmead Children's Hospital. And he seemed to get a bit of money. And I actually followed him from here out to the Northern Territory, just for a bit of a run, and then came back again. And then it sort of set the seeds in my mind to do something like that. I looked up all the records I could find, and I'd never found where an aeroplane and a motorbike had raced round Australia, ever. And so I thought, what a great thing to do. And so that's what we started. And of course, I managed to get the motorbike fairly easy, and the plane was a bit harder. But once we got the plane, and we used to have regular meetings, probably in the finish, probably one a week, you know, to try and finalise things. One of the chap that owned the motorbike, his sister lived in Sydney, and she raised a lot of money in Sydney for us. She was very good, and she was going to be our PR person on the trip around Australia. And so that's how it actually started, you know.
What's up for you in the you know, either, you know, current projects, adventures coming up? Anything?
No, I've really got nothing planned at the moment. I'd like to go to a few car shows, and there's one in Albury in Easter next year. There's one in Sydney in January, and apart from that, and I like to go out west in the old car. I've got some mates who've got a property out there. It's only about 700 clicks out there, you know, and it's I enjoy that, you know. But from now on, I've decided just recently that I've taken the second petrol tank out of the car. I did have 2 petrol tanks, which gave me a 1,000 kilometre range, and I've decided in the car's in its dimming years that that I'd lighten the car off a bit, which I've been doing, you know, gradually, because and I've decided not to use 2 petrol tanks now. I'll just use one and fill up. But before I could do 1,000 kilometres of a night, you know, and still laugh the next day.
Speaking of laughing, I hear you have some talent in the way of singing.
Oh, I'm doubtful. I don't think it's talent. I've just put a CD out, and it is available for purchase, and I could not fringe the copyright but I will show you a copy of the CD downstairs when we go down.
Okay.
So what sort of tune would you sing? Say you were going down the west coast of Australia, out in the wilds there around Fitzroy Crossing. What would you be singing?
I just sing anything at all.
How about give us a little sample of what you'd like you to be singing?
Oh, it depends, you know. It depends what mood you're in, you know.
Say you're in a bad mood and you had a real cranky cameraman with you. I couldn't think of anything to sing that'd be bad enough for that bad cameraman. You know, I always swore one of these days I'm going to get that bastard on the spot. And
This is it.